When Adrian Cole walked into that restaurant pretending to be his brother, he expected an awkward hour with some stranger who'd been set up on a blind date. What he didn't expect was Vivian Sinclair, Portland's most feared billionaire CEO, sitting across from him with questions he couldn't lie his way out of. And he definitely didn't expect her to see straight through every wall he'd spent 3 years building around his grief. One accidental dinner, one impossible woman, one 6-year-old daughter who'd already lost too much. Some mistakes change everything. This is that story. Drop a comment with your city so I can see how far this one travels. The pasta sauce was everywhere. Adrian Cole stood in his cramped kitchen, paper towel in one hand, his daughter's chin in the other, trying to wipe marinara off a face that wouldn't stop giggling. Emma's grin was pure chaos. Tomato smeared across both cheeks, a chunk of spaghetti dangling from her hair like some kind of culinary ornament. "Hold still," Adrian said, his voice tired but not angry. Never angry. Not with her. "It's in my ear, Daddy. I know it's in your ear. I don't know how you got it in your ear, but I know it's there." Emma squirmed, her small hands sticky with sauce, reaching for his shirt and leaving red fingerprints on the gray cotton. Adrian didn't stop her. The shirt was already ruined. Everything in this house had been ruined at some point. The couch, the walls, his sleep schedule, his ability to have a conversation about anything other than dinosaurs or why the sky wasn't actually blue if you looked at it the right way. He loved it. He hated it. Mostly he was just exhausted. "Can I have dessert? You all right?" "You didn't finish your dinner." "I ate the noodles." "You ate 3 noodles." "That's basically all of them." Adrian almost smiled. Almost. He tossed the paper towel into the trash and ran the faucet, warm water washing the sauce off his hands. The kitchen was a disaster. Dishes stacked in the sink, a pot on the stove with dried red crust around the rim. The floor needed sweeping. The whole house needed sweeping. But Emma was clean now, or clean enough. And that was all that mattered tonight. His phone buzzed on the counter. Adrian glanced at it, saw his brother's name, and ignored it. Danny could wait. Danny always needed something, and Adrian had exactly 0 energy left for whatever crisis his younger brother had manufactured this time. He dried his hands, turned back to Emma, and was about to tell her to go brush her teeth when the phone buzzed again. Then again. Then it started ringing. Emma looked up at him with those wide brown eyes, her mother's eyes. And Adrian felt the familiar weight drop into his chest. He picked up the phone. "What?" "Adrian, man, I need a huge favor." Danny's voice was tight, stressed, and a little slurred. Adrian closed his eyes. "Are you drunk?" "No, maybe, a little. That's not the point." "What's the point, Danny?" "I got into an accident. I'm fine. Don't freak out. But my car's totaled and I'm at the hospital getting checked out. And I can't make it to this thing tonight, and I need you to go instead." Adrian walked out of the kitchen, leaving Emma to dig through the cupboard for cookies she wasn't supposed to have. He pressed the phone to his ear and spoke quietly, carefully, like he was explaining something to a child. "What thing?" "A date. A blind date. Sarah set it up, and I can't just not show up because then call her and cancel. I don't have her number. Sarah has her number. And Sarah's pissed at me because I forgot to pick up her dry cleaning yesterday, so she's not answering. And this woman is going to be sitting alone in a restaurant thinking I stood her up, and that's not my problem." "Adrian, please, just go sit with her for an hour. Explain what happened. Buy her a drink. Be nice. You're good at being nice." Adrian wasn't good at being nice. He was good at being quiet, which people often mistook for nice. He stared at the living room, toys scattered across the floor, a blanket tangled on the couch, a half-finished puzzle of a cartoon unicorn spread out on the coffee table. This was his life. This small, messy, predictable routine. He didn't do blind dates. He didn't do restaurants. He didn't do anything that required him to be someone other than Emma's dad. "I can't. I have Emma." "Call Mrs. Alvarez. She's watched Emma 100 times. It's 8 o'clock on a Wednesday. She'll do it. She loves you. Everyone loves you. Just go. Sit with this woman for an hour, and I swear I'll owe you forever." Adrian could hear noise in the background. Hospital sounds, voices, someone laughing. Danny was fine. He was always fine. He crashed cars and missed dates and forgot dry cleaning, and somehow everything always worked out because someone else cleaned up the mess. Usually Adrian. "What's her name, Ice?" Adrian said finally. "Vivian." Vivian Sinclair. The name didn't mean anything to him. Adrian didn't follow the news, didn't scroll social media, didn't care about whoever was rich or famous or important this week. He taught high school history, came home, made dinner, helped with homework, and collapsed into bed by 10. That was the routine. That was all he had room for. Fine. 1 hour. Then I'm leaving. Thank you, seriously. You're the best. Where? Margot, downtown. Reservations at 9. Adrian hung up before Danny could say anything else. He stood in the living room, phone in hand, staring at nothing. Margot. He knew that place. Expensive. The kind of restaurant where people went to impress each other, to make deals, to pretend their lives were more elegant than they actually were. He'd been there once, years ago, with his wife, back when things like candlelit dinners and good wine mattered. He didn't go to places like that anymore. Emma appeared in the doorway, a cookie in each hand, chocolate smeared on her lips. Who was that? Uncle Danny? Is he okay? He's fine. Listen, I need to go out for a little bit. I'm going to call Mrs. Alvarez to come stay with you. Emma's face fell. But it's Wednesday. We watch the dinosaur show on Wednesdays. I know. I'll be back before it's over. You promise? Adrian crouched down so they were eye to eye. He reached out, brushed a curl away from her forehead, and nodded. I promise. Mrs. Alvarez lived 2 doors down and answered on the first ring. Alvarez lived. She was at the house in 10 minutes, smiling and warm and smelling like cinnamon, asking Emma about school while Adrian grabbed his jacket. He kissed his daughter on the top of her head, told her to behave, and stepped out into the cold autumn night. The drive downtown took 20 minutes. Adrian spent most of it trying to figure out what he was going to say to this woman. Hi, I'm not Danny. Danny crashed his car. He's fine. Sorry you got dragged into this. That would probably cover it. She'd be annoyed, maybe embarrassed, and he'd buy her a drink to smooth things over. Then he'd leave, go home, and forget this ever happened. He parked 3 blocks from the restaurant because he refused to pay for valet. The streets were wet from earlier rain, reflecting the glow of streetlights and storefronts. Adrian walked with his hands in his pockets, shoulders hunched against the wind. He hadn't dressed up. Didn't own anything worth dressing up in anymore, just dark jeans, a button-down shirt that wasn't wrinkled, and a jacket that had seen better years. Margot was exactly as he remembered. Soft lighting, white tablecloths, a host station near the entrance where a young woman with perfect posture smiled at him like he'd just walked into a museum. Good evening. Do you have a reservation? Cole, 9 o'clock. She checked her tablet, nodded, and gestured toward the dining room. Right this way. Adrian followed her through the maze of tables, past couples leaning close over wine glasses, past a group of men in suits laughing too loud. The whole place felt like a performance, everyone playing a role. He didn't belong here, hadn't belonged here in a long time. The host stopped at a table near the back. A woman was already seated, looking at her phone, one hand resting on the stem of a wine glass. Adrian's first thought was that Danny had wildly undersold this situation. His second thought was that he'd made a terrible mistake coming here. Vivian Sinclair looked up. She was beautiful in a way that felt almost unfair. The kind of face that didn't need effort, sharp features softened by dark eyes and the faintest hint of a smile. Her hair was pulled back, sleek and professional, and she wore a black dress that probably cost more than Adrian's car. But it wasn't the looks that threw him. It was the way she was watching him, curious, calm, like she already knew this wasn't going to go the way either of them expected. Danny? She said. Her voice was smooth, controlled, with just enough warmth to make the question sound genuine instead of accusatory. Adrian cleared his throat. Not exactly. Vivian tilted her head slightly. Her expression didn't change, but something flickered in her eyes. Amusement, maybe, or suspicion. Not exactly, she repeated. I'm his brother, Adrian. He stayed standing, one hand still in his pocket, the other gesturing vaguely like he was trying to explain a concept he didn't fully understand. Danny got into a car accident tonight. He's fine, but he couldn't make it, and he didn't have your number to cancel, so he asked me to come explain. I'm sorry. This is weird. I know it's weird. Vivian set her phone down. She leaned back in her chair, fingers still on the wine glass, and studied him for a long moment. Adrian braced himself for anger, annoyance, a sharp comment about wasted time and inconsiderate men. Instead, she smiled. Sit down. Adrian blinked. What? Sit down, she said again, nodding at the chair across from her. You came all the way here. Might as well stay for a drink. You don't have to, I know I don't have to. I'm asking. Bust. Adrian hesitated, then pulled out the chair and sat. The table was small, intimate in a way that made him immediately uncomfortable. He could smell her perfume, something subtle, expensive, the kind of scent that lingered. A waiter appeared out of nowhere, filled a glass of water for Adrian, and vanished just as quickly. Vivian took a sip of her wine, watching him over the rim. So, Adrian, you're the brother who cleans up Danny's messes. It wasn't a question. Adrian almost laughed. That obvious? You have the look? What look? Tired, responsible, the kind of person who answers the phone even when they know they shouldn't. Adrian picked up his water glass, more to have something to do with his hands than because he was thirsty. Yeah, that's about right. How bad was the accident? Not bad. Bender. He's at the hospital getting checked out, but he sounded fine. Mostly just panicked about standing you up. That's oddly sweet. Danny has his moments. Oh, Vivian smiled again, a real smile this time, and Adrian felt something shift. She wasn't what he expected, wasn't cold or entitled or annoyed. She seemed normal, which made no sense, because nothing about this situation was normal. So, Vivian said, setting her glass down, what do you do, Adrian, when you're not rescuing your brother from his own poor decisions? I teach history, high school. Do you like it? The question caught him off guard. Most people asked what he taught, or where he taught. No one asked if he liked it. Most days, Adrian said. The kids are a lot. But yeah, I like it. That's a better answer than most people give about their jobs. What about you? I run a company. Adrian waited for more. When she didn't offer it, he raised an eyebrow. What kind of company? What? The kind that makes a lot of money and keeps me busy. She said it lightly, like it was a joke, but there was something underneath. Weariness, maybe. Or boredom. I'm good at it. That's about all there is to say. The waiter returned, hovering near the table with a leather-bound menu. Vivian waved him off without looking. We're fine for now. Adrian watched the waiter retreat, then looked back at Vivian. You do this a lot? Blind dates? First time, actually. A friend insisted. Said I needed to get out more, meet new people, stop spending every night working. She paused, her fingers tracing the edge of her wine glass. What about you? When's the last time you went on a date? Adrian's throat tightened. He looked down at the table, at the spotless white cloth, and tried to find an answer that didn't sound pathetic. 3 years. Vivian's expression shifted. Not pity, something closer to understanding. That's a long time. Yeah. She didn't push, didn't ask why, just nodded and let the silence settle between them. Adrian appreciated that more than she could know. Most people heard a gap like that and immediately started digging, trying to find the story, the wound. Vivian just let it be. So, she said after a moment, her tone lighter now, if you could teach any period of history, what would it be? Adrian blinked. What? You're a history teacher. If you could focus on one era, one event, what would you pick? It was such a simple question, such a normal question, and for some reason it made Adrian's chest ache. He couldn't remember the last time someone had asked him something that wasn't about Emma or bills or whether he'd remembered to buy milk. The Civil War, he said quietly. Not the battles, the reconstruction. What happens after everything falls apart? How people try to put things back together. Vivian's eyes stayed on his, steady and focused. That's specific. It's complicated. Most people think the war ended and everything went back to normal. It didn't. It took decades. And even then, nothing really went back to the way it was. It just became something different. Sounds like you've thought about it a lot. Adrian shrugged. It's interesting how people rebuild, what they choose to keep and what they let go. Vivian leaned forward slightly, resting her chin on her hand. Are we still talking about history? Adrian met her gaze and realized, with uncomfortable clarity, that they weren't. He looked away first, reaching for his water again. Maybe not. The conversation shifted after that. Small things, easy things. Vivian asked about Portland, about where he grew up, about whether he'd always wanted to teach. Adrian asked her about travel, about the last book she'd read, about whether running a company was as miserable as it sounded. She laughed at that, a real laugh, surprised and unguarded, and something in Adrian's chest loosened. An hour passed, then another. Adrian didn't notice. He was too busy listening to Vivian talk about a disastrous board meeting where someone's toupee had fallen into a water pitcher. Too busy watching the way her hands moved when she described something frustrating, the way her voice softened when she talked about her grandmother. She was sharp, funny, a little cynical, but not mean. Just realistic. And she listened, actually listened, when he talked, like his words mattered. It had been so long since anyone listened. "Can I ask you something?" Vivian said eventually, her wine glass nearly empty now. "Sure." "Why did you really come tonight?" Adrian frowned. "I told you. Danny asked me to." "I know what Danny asked, but you didn't have to say yes. You could have told him to handle it himself. So why did you come?" Adrian stared at her, trying to figure out if this was a test, if there was a right answer. Finally, he just told the truth. "Because he's my brother. And because I didn't want you to sit here alone thinking someone ditched you." Vivian's expression softened. She looked at him like he'd just said something important, though Adrian had no idea what. "That's a good answer," she said quietly. The waiter appeared again, asking if they wanted dessert. Adrian glanced at his watch and his stomach dropped. It was almost 11:30. He'd promised Emma he'd be home before her show ended. That was 2 hours ago. "I have to go," he said, standing abruptly. "I'm sorry, I didn't realize how late." "It's fine." Vivian stood too, smoothing her dress. "I should get going anyway." They walked toward the entrance together, Adrian's mind already racing through the apology he owed Mrs. Alvarez. Vivian moved beside him, calm and unhurried, like she had all the time in the world. Outside, the air was colder now, sharp enough to sting. Vivian pulled a coat from the check, something long and tailored, and Adrian shoved his hands back into his jacket pockets. "Thank you," Vivian said, turning to face him. "For coming. For staying. This was not what I expected." "Yeah, same." She smiled, small and genuine, and Adrian realized he was staring. He looked away quickly, clearing his throat. Adrian." He stopped. Vivian stepped closer, close enough that he could see the faint lines at the corners of her eyes, the way her breath misted in the cold. "Can I ask you one more thing?" "Okay. Do you regret coming tonight, Mom?" Adrian thought about it, about the restaurant, the conversation, the way she'd made him forget for 2 hours that his life was just routines and responsibilities and trying not to drown, about the way she'd looked at him like he was more than just someone's brother or someone's father. "No," he said. "I don't." Vivian's smile widened. She reached into her purse, pulled out a business card, and pressed it into his hand. "In case you ever want to talk about Reconstruction again." "Boy." Adrian looked down at the card. Elegant black print, a name, a number. He slipped it into his pocket. "Good night, Adrian." "Good night." She walked toward a sleek black car parked at the curb, because of course she had a car waiting, and Adrian stood there, watching until she disappeared inside. Then he turned and walked back to his own car 3 blocks away, his mind spinning. By the time he got home, it was past midnight. Mrs. Alvarez was asleep on the couch, and Emma was curled up in her bed, clutching her stuffed dinosaur. Adrian paid the babysitter, thanked her quietly, and locked the door behind her. Then he stood in the hallway, staring at the business card in his hand. Vivian Sinclair, CEO, Sinclair Enterprises. He Googled her. The first image that came up was a professional headshot. Vivian in a navy suit, expression serious, every inch the powerful executive. The articles underneath talked about billion-dollar deals, aggressive expansions, a reputation for being ruthless in negotiations. Portland's most successful businesswoman under 40, a woman who didn't suffer fools and didn't apologize for her success. Adrian scrolled through the photos. red carpet events, charity galas, board meetings. In every single one, Vivian looked untouchable, controlled, perfect. Nothing like the woman who'd laughed about a toupee and a water pitcher. He closed his phone and walked into Emma's room. She was still asleep, her small chest rising and falling in the dim light from the hallway. Adrian sat on the edge of her bed, careful not to wake her, and just watched. This was his world. This tiny person who needed him, who trusted him, who didn't care about billion-dollar companies or elegant dinners or women who wore dresses that cost more than a month's rent. He thought about the business card in his pocket. He thought about Vivian's question. "Do you regret coming tonight?" He thought about the way she'd looked at him when he talked about rebuilding, like she understood something he hadn't said out loud. Adrian stood, kissed Emma's forehead, and walked out of the room. He didn't throw the card away, but he didn't call either. 3 days passed before Adrian looked at the card again. It stayed in his jacket pocket, folded once, the edges already softening from being handled unconsciously whenever he reached for his keys. He'd take it out, stare at the name printed in clean black letters, then shove it back. Every single time, the same cycle. Pull it out, stare, put it away. Emma noticed something was off on Thursday morning. She sat at the kitchen table, pushing Cheerios around in her bowl, watching him with that unnervingly perceptive look 6-year-olds sometimes had. "You're thinking too loud," she said. Adrian glanced up from his coffee. "What?" "You have your thinking face, the one you make when you're trying to fix the toaster." "I'm not trying to fix anything." "Then why do you look mad at your phone?" Adrian wasn't looking at his phone. He was looking at the counter where he'd left the business card the night before, right next to the stack of unpaid bills and a permission slip for Emma's field trip. He picked up the card, slipped it back into his pocket. "I'm not mad. Eat your cereal." "Is it about the lady?" Adrian's hand froze halfway to his coffee mug. "What lady?" "The one Uncle Danny made you see. Mrs. Alvarez said you went to a fancy restaurant." "Mom, us bumped." Of course, Mrs. Alvarez had said something. The woman was kind and reliable and completely incapable of keeping anything to herself. Adrian sighed, took a long drink of coffee that had gone lukewarm, and tried to figure out how to explain this to a 6-year-old. "It wasn't a date. I was just helping Uncle Danny." "Did she smell nice?" "What?" "Mrs. Alvarez says you can tell if someone's nice by how they smell." "Was she nice?" "Oh." Adrian rubbed his face. It was 7:15 in the morning, and he was already exhausted. "Yeah, she was nice. Are you going to see her again?" "I don't know. Maybe. Probably not." Emma went back to her cereal, apparently satisfied with that answer. Adrian wasn't satisfied with anything. He drove Emma to school, sat through 2 classes of bored teenagers who didn't care about the Missouri Compromise, ate lunch alone in his classroom, and spent his planning period staring at the business card on his desk. He could just call, say thank you for the conversation, keep it simple, professional. It didn't have to mean anything, except it would mean something. Because Vivian Sinclair wasn't just some woman he'd met at a restaurant. She was a billionaire. She had people, assistants, drivers, a life so far removed from his that even thinking about calling felt ridiculous. What would he even say? "Hey, I'm the guy who showed up instead of his brother. Want to grab coffee sometime between your board meetings and my parent-teacher conferences?" He put the card away. Friday came, then Saturday. Adrian spent the weekend doing laundry, fixing a leaky faucet, and taking Emma to the park where she made him push her on the swings for 45 minutes straight. His arms ached, his back hurt. He went to bed early and woke up Sunday morning to Emma jumping on his chest because she'd had a nightmare about a dinosaur eating her shoes. Normal, predictable, safe. The card stayed in his pocket. Monday morning, his phone rang while he was grading papers. Unknown number. Adrian almost didn't answer, but something made him pick up. "Hello? Adrian Cole?" The voice was familiar, but he couldn't place it. Professional, female, slightly amused. "Yeah, who's this?" "Vivian Sinclair. We met last week. You probably don't remember." "I remember." There was a pause. Adrian could hear noise in the background. Voices, movement, the kind of controlled chaos that came with busy offices. "Good," Vivian said. "I was starting to think you'd thrown away my card." "I didn't throw it away." "But you didn't call." Adrian set down his pen, leaned back in his chair. His classroom was empty, the fluorescent lights buzzing overhead. Outside the window, students were heading to lunch, shouting and laughing and completely oblivious to the fact that Adrian's heart was doing something stupid in his chest. "I wasn't sure if I should," he said. "Why not?" "Because you're you. And I'm a high school teacher who drives a 10-year-old Honda and spent yesterday morning unclogging a toilet." Vivian laughed. Actually laughed. Not polite, not restrained. A real laugh that sounded like she'd surprised herself. "That's the best reason I've heard all week for not calling someone. I'm serious." "So am I." "Adrian, do you know how many people call me every day trying to impress me? Trying to prove they're important or connected or worth my time? Probably a lot. Hundreds. And every single one of them is exhausting. You know what wasn't exhausting? Sitting in a restaurant with someone who talked to me like I was a person instead of a business opportunity." Adrian didn't know what to say to that. He picked up the pen again, clicked it once, twice. "So why are you calling?" he asked. "Because I wanted to. And because I'm in the middle of a meeting that's making me want to throw my laptop out a window. And I thought talking to you might remind me why I don't." "How's that working out?" "So far, pretty good." Adrian smiled despite himself. Somewhere down the hall, a bell rang. Lunch was over. He had 15 minutes before his next class. "I'm working," he said. "I know, I'll let you go. But Adrian?" "Yeah, if you decide you want to have coffee sometime, call me. If you don't, that's fine too. I'm not going to chase you, but I had a good time last week, and I think you did too." She hung up before he could respond. Adrian sat there, phone in hand, staring at nothing. His next class started filing in. Juniors, loud and chaotic, already arguing about something that had happened at lunch. He shoved the phone into his pocket, stood up, and started writing the day's assignment on the board. But his mind wasn't on the assignment. It was on Vivian's voice. On the way she'd said his name like it mattered. He called her that night after Emma went to bed. She answered on the second ring. "I was starting to think you'd lost my number again." "I didn't lose it. I just needed to think." And I'd like to have coffee, if you're still interested." "I'm interested. When?" They settled on Wednesday. A small place near campus, nothing fancy, somewhere Adrian could actually afford to buy a cup of coffee without checking his bank account first. Vivian didn't argue. Didn't suggest somewhere better, just said Wednesday worked and she'd see him at 10. Adrian hung up and immediately regretted everything. Wednesday morning arrived faster than it should have. Adrian dropped Emma at school, drove to the coffee shop, and sat in his car for 10 minutes trying to convince himself this wasn't a terrible idea. When Vivian's black sedan pulled up, he forced himself to get out. She was wearing jeans. That was the first thing he noticed. Dark jeans, ankle boots, a cream sweater that looked soft and expensive, but not showy. Her hair was down, loose around her shoulders, and she wasn't wearing the sharp professional mask from the restaurant. She looked normal, approachable, like someone he might actually be allowed to talk to. "You look nervous," Vivian said as she walked up. "I am nervous." "Why?" "Because I still don't understand why you wanted to do this." Vivian smiled, tilted her head toward the coffee shop. "Buy me a latte and maybe I'll explain." Inside, the place was half empty. A couple of students typing on laptops, an older man reading a newspaper, soft jazz playing over the speakers. Adrian ordered a black coffee for himself and a vanilla latte for Vivian, and they sat at a corner table near the window. "So," Vivian said, wrapping her hands around the cup, "tell me about your week." "My week was boring. I graded papers, fixed a sink, watched a lot of cartoons." "Sounds nice." "It wasn't. It was exhausting." "But you did it anyway." "Yeah, that's kind of how it works when you have a kid." Vivian took a sip of her latte, her eyes never leaving his. "You talk about her a lot, your daughter. Is that a problem?" "Hey." "No, it's just different. Most men I meet don't mention their kids unless they're trying to prove they're family-oriented. You talk about her like she's the most important thing in your life." "She is." Vivian nodded slowly, like he'd just confirmed something she'd been wondering about. "What's her name?" "Emma." "How old?" 6, 7 in December. "What's she like?" Adrian hesitated. He didn't talk about Emma with strangers. Didn't share the details of her life, her personality, the things that made her who she was. But Vivian wasn't asking like she was fishing for information. She was asking like she actually cared. She's stubborn, Adrian said finally. Smart. She asks a million questions and doesn't accept half answers. She's terrified of thunderstorms, but she'll fight any kid twice her size if they're being mean to someone. And she thinks dinosaurs are better than people, which honestly, she's probably right about. Vivian's expression softened. She sounds a lot like you. I don't know if that's a compliment. It is. They talked for an hour, then 2. Adrian told her about teaching, about the kids who made his job impossible and the ones who made it worth it. Vivian told him about her company, about the pressure of running something so big that one bad decision could cost people their jobs. She was honest in a way Adrian hadn't expected, talking about the loneliness of success, the way people treated her differently once they knew who she was, the exhaustion of being constantly watched and judged. I had lunch with someone last month, Vivian said, stirring what was left of her latte. A potential business partner, very successful, very charming. We talked for 2 hours and I realized afterward that I didn't remember a single thing he'd said. It was all just noise, performance, everyone trying to impress everyone else. Sounds awful. It was. And then I went home and sat in my apartment alone and thought about how that's basically my entire life, just noise. Then, Adrian looked at her, really looked at her, and saw the exhaustion underneath the polish. The same exhaustion he saw in the mirror every morning. So why do you keep doing it? He asked. Because I'm good at it. Because people depend on me. Because if I stop, I don't know what else I'd do. That's not a great reason. It's the only one I have. Adrian understood that better than he wanted to admit. He'd spent 3 years moving through routines, doing what needed to be done, because stopping meant thinking about everything he'd lost. Vivian's life looked different from the outside, but the mechanism was the same. Keep moving. Don't stop. Don't think too hard. Can I ask you something? Vivian said. Sure. What happened 3 years ago? You said that was the last time you went on a date. What changed? Mace. Adrian's chest tightened. He looked down at his coffee, now cold, and tried to find words that wouldn't make this heavier than it already was. My wife died. Vivian went still. I'm sorry. It was sudden. An aneurysm. She was fine one day and gone the next. Emma was 3. She doesn't really remember her. And you've been doing this alone ever since. Yeah. Oh, Vivian reached across the table, her hand resting near his but not touching. That's a lot to carry. I don't really have the choice. Everyone has a choice, Adrian. You chose to keep going. That matters. Adrian looked up, met her eyes, and saw something there he hadn't expected. Not pity, understanding. Like she knew exactly what it felt like to carry weight no one else could see. I should go, he said, his voice rough. I have to pick up Emma from school. Okay. They walked outside together, the afternoon sun sharp and cold. Vivian pulled her coat tighter, glanced at him with something that looked almost like hesitation. Can I see you again? She asked. Adrian should have said no. Should have explained that this was complicated, that his life didn't have room for someone like her, that he couldn't afford to let anyone get close. But he didn't say any of that. Yeah, he said. I'd like that. Vivian smiled, pulled out her phone, and handed it to him. Put your number in. I'll call you. Adrian typed in his number, handed it back. Their fingers brushed, and he felt it like a shock. Vivian seemed to feel it too, because she pulled back quickly, slipping the phone into her pocket. I'll talk to you soon. Okay. She walked to her car, turned back once to wave, and then she was gone. Adrian stood in the parking lot trying to figure out what the hell he'd just done. The calls started after that. Not every day, but enough that Adrian found himself checking his phone more than he should. Vivian would call late at night after Emma was asleep, and they'd talk about nothing and everything. She told him about a disastrous investor meeting where someone had spilled coffee all over a contract. He told her about a student who'd turned in an essay written entirely in memes. She asked him about Emma's favorite books. He asked her if she ever got tired of being in charge. All the time, Vivian admitted one night. But the thing about being in charge is that no one asks if you're tired. They just expect you to keep going. Sounds familiar. Does it ever get easier, being a parent, I mean? Adrian thought about that. About the nights Emma woke up crying, about the mornings he could barely get out of bed, about the constant fear that he was failing her in ways he couldn't see. "No," he said. "But you get better at pretending it does." Vivian laughed, soft and sad. "That's the most honest thing anyone said to me in months." 2 weeks later, Vivian asked if they could meet again. Another coffee shop, this time closer to her office. Adrian agreed, even though it meant rearranging his entire afternoon. He dropped Emma with Mrs. Alvarez, drove downtown, and found Vivian already waiting at a table near the back. She looked different, tired. Her hair was pulled back tight, and there were shadows under her eyes that makeup couldn't quite hide. "Rough day?" Adrian asked, sitting down. "Rough month. I've been dealing with a merger that's falling apart, and everyone keeps looking at me like I'm supposed to have all the answers. Do you?" "No, but I can't tell them that." Adrian ordered coffee for both of them, and they sat in silence for a while. It wasn't uncomfortable, just two people too exhausted to perform. "Can I tell you something?" Vivian said eventually. "Of course. I don't know how to do this, whatever this is. I'm not good at letting people in. I'm good at contracts and negotiations and making sure I'm always 3 steps ahead. But this? Sitting here with you talking about real things? I don't have a strategy for this." Adrian reached across the table, covered her hand with his. It was the first time he'd touched her on purpose, and he felt her fingers curl slightly around his. "You don't need a strategy," he said. "You just need to be honest." "I'm trying, but it's hard." "I know." Vivian looked at him, her eyes searching his face like she was trying to memorize it. "You make it look easy. Being honest. It's not easy. I just don't have the energy to be anything else." She smiled at that, small and genuine. "I like that about you. You don't pretend. Neither do you. Not with me, anyway." "No," Vivian said softly. "Not with you." They stayed until the coffee shop closed, talking until the barista started stacking chairs and giving them pointed looks. Adrian walked Vivian to her car, and this time when she turned to say goodbye, she didn't pull away when he stepped closer. "Thank you," she said. "For what?" "For not making this harder than it already is, Chop." Adrian didn't know what to say to that, so he just nodded. Vivian reached up, her hand resting briefly against his chest, right over his heart. Then she got in her car and drove away. Adrian stood there, hand pressed to the spot where hers had been, and felt something crack open inside him, something he'd kept locked tight for 3 years. The next time they met, Vivian suggested dinner. Somewhere quiet, she said, somewhere they could actually talk without interruptions. Adrian agreed, but when Saturday came and he dropped Emma at Danny's apartment, his brother gave him a look that made his stomach twist. "You're seeing her again?" "Yeah. The billionaire. Her name's Vivian." Danny leaned against the doorframe, arms crossed, grinning like he'd just won something. "You know this is insane, right?" "I know. And you're doing it anyway." "Yeah." "Good. You deserve something good, man. Just don't screw it up." Adrian didn't dignify that with a response. He kissed Emma goodbye, told her to behave, and drove to the restaurant Vivian had chosen. It was small, tucked away on a side street, the kind of place you'd never find unless you knew it was there. Vivian was already seated when he arrived, and when she saw him, her whole face lit up. That look hit him harder than anything else, like she'd been waiting for him, like he mattered. They ordered wine neither of them drank much of, food that sat half-finished on their plates, and talked until the restaurant was nearly empty. Vivian told him about growing up without money, about clawing her way up through sheer stubbornness, about the people who'd doubted her and the ones who'd believed in her. Adrian told her about his wife, about the grief that still caught him off guard, about the guilt of feeling happy again. "You're allowed to be happy," Vivian said, her voice firm. "You know that, right?" "I'm working on it. She wouldn't want you to be miserable." "I know. But knowing and feeling are different things." Vivian reached across the table, took his hand. This time, neither of them pulled away. "I don't know where this goes," she said quietly. "I don't know how to make this work with my life, and your life, and everything that's complicated about both, but I want to try, if you do." Adrian looked at her, at this impossibly beautiful, impossibly complicated woman who somehow made him feel like himself again, and made a decision that terrified him. "Yeah," he said, "I want to try." Vivian's smile was worth every ounce of fear. They left the restaurant together, walking slowly through streets that were nearly empty now. The air was cold, sharp enough to sting, and Adrian offered Vivian his jacket without thinking. She took it, pulled it around her shoulders, and they walked close enough that their arms brushed. "Can I ask you something?" Adrian said. "Anything." "Are you scared?" Vivian stopped walking, turned to face him. Terrified. Of what? Of wanting this too much. Of letting myself believe it's real and then losing it. Adrian understood that. He understood it so completely it hurt. "Me too, he said. Vivian stepped closer, close enough that he could see the faint freckles across her nose, the way her breath misted in the cold. She reached up, her hand resting against his jaw, and Adrian felt his heart stop. "So what do we do?" she whispered. "We try anyway." She kissed him, soft, tentative, like she was afraid he might disappear. Adrian kissed her back, his hand tangling in her hair, and for the first time in 3 years, he let himself feel something other than grief. When they finally pulled apart, Vivian was smiling. That was probably a terrible idea. Probably. "Want to do it again?" Adrian laughed, pulled her close, and kissed her until they were both breathless and freezing and completely certain they were making a mistake neither of them wanted to take back. Adrian didn't tell Emma about Vivian right away. It wasn't that he was hiding it exactly. It was more that he didn't know how to explain something he barely understood himself. What was he supposed to say? That he'd met someone, that he liked her? That for the first time since her mother died, he was thinking about a future that looked different than the endless routine they'd been living? Emma was 6. She asked questions he couldn't answer on a good day. Adding Vivian to the equation felt like introducing chaos into a system that was barely holding together. But kids noticed things, especially kids like Emma, who watched him the way scientists watched experiments, cataloging every deviation from normal. "You're smiling at your phone again," she said one morning, perched on the bathroom counter while Adrian shaved. She was supposed to be brushing her teeth. Instead, she was swinging her legs and studying him with unsettling focus. "I'm not smiling." "You are. You have your happy face." Adrian glanced at his reflection. He looked tired, unshaven until 30 seconds ago, definitely not happy. "I don't have a happy face." "Yes, you do. It's the one you make when I draw you pictures. Is someone drawing you pictures?" "No." "Then why are you happy?" Adrian rinsed his razor, dried his face, and tried to figure out how to navigate this conversation. Emma was still watching him, toothbrush dangling from one hand, toothpaste foam at the corner of her mouth. "I'm not unhappy," he said finally. "Is that okay?" Emma considered this. Then she shrugged, hopped off the counter, and actually started brushing her teeth. Crisis averted. For now. The truth was, Adrian was texting Vivian. A lot. More than he should, probably, given that she ran a company and he was supposed to be teaching teenagers about westward expansion. But she'd text him between meetings. Quick messages, nothing elaborate, just enough to remind him she was thinking about him. And he'd text back during his planning period, or while Emma watched cartoons, or late at night when the house was quiet and he couldn't sleep. It was ridiculous. He felt like a teenager. But it also felt good, and Adrian had forgotten what good felt like. They'd been seeing each other for 3 weeks when Vivian asked the question he'd been dreading. "When do I get to meet her?" They were sitting in Adrian's car in the parking lot behind a bookstore, coffees going cold in the cup holders, December rain drumming against the windshield. Vivian had an hour between meetings. Adrian had skipped lunch. This was what their relationship looked like now. Stolen moments, quick conversations, trying to fit 2 complicated lives into the gaps. "Meet who?" Adrian said, even though he knew exactly who. "Your daughter, Emma." Adrian stared through the windshield at the rain. "I don't know if that's a good idea." "Why not?" "Because it's complicated." "Everything's complicated, Adrian. That's not a reason." He turned to look at her. Vivian was wearing a dark suit, hair pulled back, minimal makeup. She looked like she'd walked out of a magazine. Meanwhile, Adrian was in jeans and a flannel shirt that had seen better years, and the distance between their worlds had never felt more obvious. "You don't know what you're asking," he said quietly. "Then explain it to me." Adrian took a breath. Let it out slow. If I introduce you to Emma, it means something. It means you're not just someone I'm seeing. It means she's going to get attached. And if this doesn't work out, you think I'm going to disappear. I think your life is insane. I think you travel constantly and work 80-hour weeks and have 100 people who need you. And I think the second this gets hard or inconvenient, you're going to realize that a single dad with a 6-year-old doesn't fit into that life. Vivian's expression didn't change, but Adrian saw something flash in her eyes. Hurt, maybe, or anger. Is that really what you think of me? She said. I don't know what to think. We've known each other a month, Vivian. You can't just what? Take a chance? Trust someone? Let yourself be happy? It's not about being happy. It's about protecting my daughter. From me. Adrian didn't answer. Couldn't answer. Because part of him was protecting Emma from her. From the possibility that Vivian would become important and then leave, the way people always seem to leave. Vivian reached for the door handle. I should go. Wait, no, it's fine. You're right. This is complicated, and maybe you're right that I don't fit into your life. I just thought... She stopped, shook her head. Never mind. I'll see you later. Adrian. She got out of the car before he could stop her, walked to her own car parked 3 spaces away, and drove off without looking back. Adrian sat there, rain hammering the roof, and felt like he'd just made a terrible mistake. He didn't call her that night, didn't text. Part of him wanted to. Wanted to apologize, explain, try to fix whatever he'd just broken. But another part of him, the part that had spent 3 years building walls around his life, told him this was for the best. Better to end it now before anyone got hurt. Emma asked about his phone again the next morning. You're not smiling anymore, she said. I'm fine. You look sad. I'm not sad. Eat your breakfast. But he was sad, and Emma knew it. And by the time Adrian dropped her at school and drove to work, he felt like he'd spent the night being run over by something heavy and unforgiving. He made it through 2 classes before his phone buzzed during 3rd period. He ignored it. Then it buzzed again. And again. Finally, during his planning period, he checked. 3 texts from Vivian. The first one said, I'm sorry, I shouldn't have pushed. The second, you're right to be careful. She's lucky to have you. The third, I miss you. Adrian stared at the messages for a long time. Then he typed back, I miss you too. The reply came 30 seconds later. Can we talk? Really talk? Yeah. When? Tonight? I can come to you. Adrian hesitated. Having Vivian at his house felt like crossing a line, but they'd already crossed so many lines that one more probably didn't matter. Okay, 8 o'clock. Vivian showed up at 8:15. Adrian had spent the previous 2 hours cleaning the house like his life depended on it, vacuuming crumbs out of couch cushions, scrubbing pasta sauce off the kitchen walls, hiding the pile of unfolded laundry in his bedroom. Emma had watched the whole thing with obvious amusement. Are we having company? Maybe. Is it a lady? Why would you think that? Because you're acting weird. Adrian couldn't argue with that. When the doorbell rang, Emma was already in her pajamas, fresh from the bath, sitting on the couch with her stuffed dinosaur and a juice box. Adrian opened the door and found Vivian standing on his porch. No makeup, hair down, wearing jeans and a sweater that looked like it cost more than his couch. Hi, she said. Hi. They stood there awkwardly until Emma's voice came from the living room. Daddy? Who is it? Adrian looked at Vivian. Vivian looked back, eyebrows raised, waiting. He made a decision. Come in, he said. Vivian stepped inside, glancing around the small entryway with its crooked coat hooks and pile of shoes. Adrian closed the door, led her into the living room, and immediately regretted every life choice that had brought him to this moment. Emma was staring, full-on, unblinking, 6-year-old staring. Emma, Adrian said carefully. This is my friend Vivian. Vivian, this is Emma. Vivian smiled, the kind of smile that looked genuine, even though Adrian could see the nervousness underneath. Hi, Emma. It's nice to meet you. Emma didn't say anything, just kept staring. Adrian tried again. Hi. Can you say hi? Is she your girlfriend? Emma asked. Vivian's smile faltered. Adrian felt his face go hot. We're, friends, he said. But do you kiss her? Emma? Mrs. Alvarez says people who kiss are boyfriends and girlfriends. Vivian made a sound that might have been a laugh. Adrian wanted to disappear into the floor. Yes, he said, because lying to Emma never worked. Sometimes we kiss. Oh. Emma processed this. Then she turned to Vivian. Do you like dinosaurs? Vivian blinked. I don't know much about them. That's sad. Dinosaurs are the best thing ever. I believe you. Do you want to see my favorite one? His name is Reginald. Before Adrian could intervene, Emma had grabbed Vivian's hand and was dragging her toward the couch, chattering about Reginald the Triceratops and why he was better than all the other stuffed animals combined. Vivian let herself be pulled along, glancing back at Adrian with an expression somewhere between panic and amusement. Adrian followed them, feeling like he'd lost control of the situation entirely. Emma spent the next 20 minutes explaining dinosaur taxonomy to Vivian, who listened with what appeared to be genuine interest. She asked questions, nodded at the right moments, didn't check her phone once. And slowly, Emma's wariness melted into something closer to approval. You're pretty, Emma said eventually, with the blunt honesty only children possessed. Thank you, Vivian said. You're pretty too. I know, Daddy says I look like my mom. The room went quiet. Adrian tensed, waiting for the awkwardness, the questions, the inevitable moment when this became too much. But Vivian just nodded. I bet she was beautiful. She was. Daddy has pictures. Do you want to see? Emma, Adrian started. It's okay, Vivian said softly, looking at him. If it's okay with you, Ita. Adrian didn't know if it was okay. But Emma was already climbing off the couch, running to the bookshelf where the photo albums were kept. She came back with the blue one, the one Adrian hadn't opened in over a year because it hurt too much. Emma sat between them, flipping pages until she found the photo she wanted. A beach picture. His wife, Sarah, laughing at something off camera, hair wild from the wind, one hand shading her eyes from the sun. That's her, Emma said. That's my mom. Vivian looked at the photo for a long time. She looks happy. Daddy says she was always happy, even when things were hard. That's a good way to be. Emma nodded seriously, then closed the album and set it aside. It's okay that you kiss my dad. I don't think Mom would be mad. Adrian's throat closed up. He couldn't speak, couldn't move, couldn't do anything except sit there while his 6-year-old daughter gave permission he hadn't known he needed. Vivian reached over, squeezed his hand. Thank you, Emma. That means a lot. Emma beamed, then announced she was thirsty and wandered off to the kitchen. Adrian sat frozen, staring at nothing. Are you okay? Vivian asked quietly. I don't know. That was a lot. Yeah. Vivian shifted closer, her shoulder pressing against his. She's incredible, Adrian. You've done an amazing job with her. I'm just trying not to screw it up. You're not screwing it up. Well, Adrian looked at her, at this woman who'd walked into his chaotic life and somehow made it feel less impossible. I'm sorry about yesterday, what I said in the car. You didn't deserve that. You were protecting her. I get it. It wasn't just that. I was protecting myself too. Because if you leave, I'm not leaving, Vivian said firmly. I know you don't believe that yet. I know you have every reason not to. But I'm not going anywhere, Adrian. This is hard and messy and nothing like my normal life. But I don't want normal. I want this. Adrian wanted to believe her, wanted it so badly it scared him. Emma came back with her juice box and climbed onto the couch between them, completely oblivious to the fact that she'd just dismantled every defense Adrian had left. Can Vivian stay for my bedtime story? She asked. Adrian looked at Vivian. Vivian looked back, eyebrows raised in question. If she wants to, Adrian said. I'd love to, Vivian said. 20 minutes later, they were crowded into Emma's small bedroom, Adrian sitting on the edge of the bed, Vivian in the chair by the window, Emma under her dinosaur blanket clutching Reginald. Adrian read from a book about a dragon who was afraid of heights, doing all the voices the way Emma liked, and when he glanced up, Vivian was watching them with an expression he couldn't quite read. Emma fell asleep before the story finished. She always did. Adrian closed the book, tucked the blanket around her shoulders, and kissed her forehead. Good night, baby. He stood, motioned for Vivian to follow, and they tiptoed out of the room, leaving the door cracked open the way Emma preferred. In the hallway, Vivian turned to him. That was perfect. It was messy. It was real and perfect. Adrian didn't know what to say to that, so he kissed her instead, soft and slow. Right there in the narrow hallway, with its scuffed walls and Emma's drawings taped everywhere. When they pulled apart, Vivian was smiling. So, what now? Now I make coffee and we figure out how to make this work. That simple? Probably not. But we can try. They went to the kitchen. Adrian made coffee while Vivian sat at the small table, looking around at the cluttered counters, the drawings on the fridge, the chaos of a life built around one small person. This is so different from my life, she said. I know. But I like it. It feels real. Adrian poured coffee into 2 mugs, handed her one. Real is messy. I'm starting to figure that out. They talked until past midnight, about logistics, schedules, how to navigate a relationship when one of them ran a company and the other had a 6-year-old who needed consistency. Vivian promised to be careful with Emma's feelings. Adrian promised to stop assuming the worst. Neither of them had any idea if it would actually work, but they were going to try. The weeks that followed weren't easy. Vivian's schedule was brutal. Early meetings, late nights, business trips that took her out of the city for days at a time. Adrian had school, had Emma, had a routine that didn't bend easily. They saw each other when they could, which wasn't often enough for either of them. But Vivian called every night. Even when she was in New York or San Francisco or wherever her job sent her, she'd call after Emma went to bed, and they'd talk until one of them was falling asleep mid-sentence. She asked about Emma's day, about Adrian's classes, about the small, ordinary things that made up his life. And Adrian asked about board meetings and investor pitches, and whether she was eating actual meals or just surviving on coffee. I had a salad today, Vivian said one night, sounding proud. That's not a meal. It had chicken in it. Still not a meal. You're very judgmental about my eating habits. Someone has to be. Vivian laughed, that real laugh he loved, and Adrian felt the distance between them shrink a little. Emma was adjusting too. She asked about Vivian sometimes, casual questions that Adrian answered carefully. Yes, Vivian was nice. Yes, she liked dinosaurs now. No, she didn't live with them. Not yet. And maybe not ever, but Adrian didn't say that part out loud. The first real test came in late December. Vivian had a major deal closing, something that required her full attention for 2 weeks straight. She barely had time to text, let alone call. Adrian understood, or tried to, but the silence was harder than he wanted to admit. He started wondering if this was the beginning of the end, if Vivian was pulling back, if he'd been right to be cautious. Then, on a Friday night when Adrian had given up expecting to hear from her, his doorbell rang. He opened it to find Vivian standing there, still in a suit, hair falling out of its clip, looking absolutely exhausted. Hi, she said. What are you doing here? I thought you had... I do. I did. I have a meeting at 6 tomorrow morning, but I needed to see you. Adrian pulled her inside, closed the door. You look like you haven't slept in a week. I haven't. This deal is killing me. But all I could think about was how I haven't seen you in 12 days, and I was going insane. Adrian didn't know whether to laugh or kiss her. He settled for both. I missed you, he said against her mouth. I missed you too, so much. They stood in the entryway wrapped around each other until Emma's voice floated down from upstairs. Daddy? Who's here? Vivian pulled back, smiled. Can I say hi? Yeah, of course. Emma appeared at the top of the stairs in her pajamas, saw Vivian, and her whole face lit up. You came back! I did. Is that okay? Yes. Did you bring your work stuff? Daddy says you have really important work. I do, but right now you're more important. Emma practically glowed. She ran down the stairs and hugged Vivian without hesitation, and Adrian watched Vivian's expression shift into something soft and unguarded. She hugged Emma back, careful and genuine, and Adrian felt something crack open in his chest. This was real. This was happening. And he was terrified and hopeful in equal measure. Vivian stayed for an hour. She sat with Emma and listened to a story about school, about a boy who'd brought a frog to class, about a spelling test Emma had aced. She didn't check her phone once, didn't seem distracted, just present, fully there, in a way that made Adrian realize how rare that was in her world. When Emma finally went back to bed, Vivian stood to leave. I have to go. Early morning tomorrow. I know. Thank you for coming. I meant what I said earlier about you being more important than work. Adrian walked her to the door, kissed her one more time. Be careful driving. I will. I'll call you tomorrow night. I'll be here. Vivian left, and Adrian stood in the doorway watching her taillights disappear down the street. When he turned around, Emma was at the top of the stairs again. I like her, Daddy. Adrian smiled. Yeah, me too. Is she going to stay? I don't know, baby. I hope she does. Adrian climbed the stairs, scooped Emma into his arms, even though she was getting too big for it. Me too. He carried her back to bed, tucked her in, and sat there for a while, listening to her breathe. The house was quiet. The world outside was cold and dark. But inside, something was shifting, something that felt a lot like hope. And for the first time since Sarah died, Adrian let himself believe that maybe, just maybe, they were going to be okay. The breaking point came on a Tuesday night in January. Adrian was in the middle of grading essays when his phone rang. Vivian's name lit up the screen, and he answered without thinking, tucking the phone between his ear and shoulder while he scribbled feedback in the margin of a paper about the Louisiana Purchase. Hey, Vivian's voice was tight. Vivian's strained in a way he had never heard before. I can't do dinner tomorrow. Adrian set down his pen. Okay, what happened? The Singapore office is imploding. I have to fly out tonight. I'll be gone at least a week, maybe longer. Tonight? My flight leaves in 3 hours. Adrian looked at the calendar on his desk. Tomorrow was supposed to be special. Emma's winter concert at school. Vivian had promised to come, had cleared her schedule specifically for it. Emma had been talking about it for days, telling anyone who would listen that her dad's girlfriend was coming to watch her sing. Emma's going to be disappointed, Adrian said quietly. There was a long pause on the other end. Then Vivian's voice, even tighter than before. I know. I'm sorry. I tried to get out of it. But it's fine. I'll explain it to her. Adrian, really, it's fine. You have to work. I get it. You sound upset. I'm not upset. You are. I can hear it in your voice. Adrian closed his eyes, pressed his fingers to the bridge of his nose. He was upset, but he didn't have the right to be. Vivian had been clear from the beginning about what her life looked like. He'd known what he was signing up for. It's just, you promised, he said finally. I know I did, and I hate breaking it. But this is my job, Adrian. This is what I do. I can't just ignore it when things fall apart. I'm not asking you to ignore it. I'm just saying it's hard on Emma, on me. Vivian was quiet for a moment. When she spoke again, her voice was defensive. Do you think this is easy for me? Do you think I want to get on a plane and spend the next week dealing with a crisis instead of being there for her concert? I didn't say that. But you're thinking it. You're thinking I chose work over her. Over you. I'm not. Yes, you are. And maybe you're right. Maybe I did. But this is who I am, Adrian. This is my life. I thought you understood that. Adrian felt something cold settle in his chest. I do understand. I'm trying to understand. Are you? Because it feels like every time I have to cancel or reschedule, you pull back a little more. Like you're waiting for me to fail. That's not fair, isn't it? You've been waiting for this to fall apart since the beginning, waiting for me to prove you right. Adrian didn't have an answer for that, because maybe she was right. Maybe part of him had been waiting, expecting. I have to go, Vivian said, her voice cracking slightly. I'll call you when I land. She hung up before he could respond. Adrian sat there, phone in hand, staring at the stack of ungraded essays. From upstairs, he could hear Emma singing to herself, practicing for tomorrow's concert. He'd have to tell her Vivian wasn't coming. Would have to watch her face fall, her disappointment, and pretend like it was okay. He didn't call Vivian back that night, didn't text, just told Emma the next morning that Vivian had to travel for work and wouldn't make the concert. Emma's smile dimmed, but she nodded like she understood, and that somehow made it worse. The concert was fine. Emma sang beautifully, standing in the front row with a paper snowflake crown on her head. Her voice clear and a little off-key in the way first graders always were. Adrian clapped louder than anyone, took a dozen photos, and told Emma afterward that she was amazing. "I wish Vivian could have seen it," Emma said in the car on the way home. "Me too, baby." "Is she mad at us?" Adrian's hands tightened on the steering wheel. "No, she's not mad. She just has important work." "More important than me?" "No, never more important than you." But Emma looked unconvinced, and Adrian felt the weight of it settle on his shoulders like something physical. Vivian called 3 days later. Adrian was making dinner, Emma was doing homework at the kitchen table, and when his phone buzzed, he almost didn't answer. But Emma saw Vivian's name on the screen and her face lit up. "Is that Vivian? Can I talk to her?" Busky. Adrian couldn't say no, not to Emma. He answered, put it on speaker. "Hey." "Hi." Vivian's voice sounded exhausted. "Is this a bad time?" "No, Emma wanted to say hi." "Vivian!" Emma shouted, abandoning her homework. "I missed you." Vivian's voice softened immediately. "I missed you too, sweetheart. How was your concert?" "It was good. I sang really loud and didn't forget any words. Daddy took videos." "I bet you were amazing. I'm so sorry I couldn't be there." "It's okay. Daddy said you had important work." "I did, but I still wish I could have been there." Emma chattered for a few more minutes about school, about a friend's birthday party coming up, about a book she was reading. Adrian listened, stirring pasta sauce, his chest tight. When Emma finally ran out of things to say, she handed the phone back to Adrian and went back to her homework. Adrian took the phone off speaker, pressed it to his ear. Hey. Vivian sounded like she was trying not to cry. "She's so sweet. I feel like garbage for missing that concert. She understands." "Does she? Or is she just being nice because she's a better person than most adults?" Adrian couldn't help it. He smiled. "Probably the second one." Vivian laughed, shaky and rough. "How are you?" "Tired." "I'm sorry. About the other night. About what I said. I was stressed and scared and I took it out on you. I wasn't exactly fair either." "No. But you weren't wrong. I did choose work over that concert, and I hate that I did. But Adrian, I don't know how to do this, how to balance everything. I'm trying, but I keep screwing it up." Adrian turned off the stove, moved to the far corner of the kitchen where Emma couldn't hear. "You're not screwing it up." "I am. I can feel you pulling away, and I don't know how to stop it." "Oh, what? I'm not pulling away. I'm just tired. A feeling like we're always working around your schedule, of explaining to Emma why you can't be there, of wondering when this next crisis is going to come up. So what do you want me to do, quit my job?" "No, I'd never ask you to do that." "Then what?" Adrian didn't have an answer. That was the problem. He didn't know what he wanted, except for this to be easier. For Vivian to be able to show up when she said she would. For Emma not to look disappointed every time plans changed. "I don't know," he said finally. Vivian was quiet for a long moment. "Maybe we need to take a break, figure out if this is actually working." Adrian's stomach dropped. "Is that what you want?" "No, but I don't know if what I want matters, if it's hurting Emma, if it's hurting you." "Vivian, just think about it, okay? I'll be back in Portland on Friday. We can talk then." She hung up before he could argue. Adrian stood in the kitchen, phone in hand, feeling like the floor had just dropped out from under him. Emma looked up from her homework. "Is Vivian okay?" "Yeah, she's fine." "You look sad." Adrian forced a smile. "I'm not sad, just tired. Come on, dinner's ready." "Oh." They ate in silence. Emma kept glancing at him, worried in that way kids got, when they sensed something was wrong but didn't know how to fix it. Adrian tried to act normal, asked about her homework, made jokes that fell flat. But his mind was somewhere else, replaying the conversation, Vivian's suggestion that they take a break. He didn't want a break, but he didn't know how to make this work either. Friday came. Vivian texted that morning. "Landed. Can I come over tonight?" Adrian stared at the message for 10 minutes before responding. Emma has a sleepover. I can drop her off at 6. I'll be there at 7. Adrian spent the day in a fog, taught his classes on autopilot, graded papers without really reading them, drove Emma to her friend's house and hugged her a little tighter than usual. "You're squishing me," Emma complained. "Sorry, have fun tonight. Be good." "I'm always good." Adrian kissed the top of her head, watched her run inside, and drove home with a knot in his stomach. Vivian arrived exactly at 7. Adrian opened the door and there she was, wearing jeans and a sweater, hair loose, no makeup. She looked as exhausted as he felt. "Hi," she said. "Hi." They stood there awkwardly until Adrian stepped aside to let her in. Vivian walked to the living room, sat on the couch, and Adrian sat across from her in the chair. The distance between them felt deliberate. "I've been thinking about what you said," Adrian started. "About taking a break." Vivian's face was carefully blank. And I don't want that, but I also don't know how to keep doing this if nothing changes." "What needs to change?" Adrian ran his hands through his hair, trying to find words for something he'd been feeling but couldn't articulate. "I need to know that we matter, Emma and me. That we're not just something you fit into your schedule when it's convenient." "You think that's what this is to me? Convenient? I think your life is complicated. I think you have 1,000 demands on your time. And I think eventually we're going to be the thing you sacrifice because it's easier than fighting for us." Vivian's expression cracked. "That's not fair." "Maybe not, but it's how I feel." "I'm here, aren't I?" "I flew back early. I cleared my schedule for the weekend." "I'm trying, Adrian." "I know you are, but trying isn't enough if Emma keeps getting hurt. So what do you want from me?" Adrian leaned forward, elbows on his knees. "I want you to be honest about whether you can actually do this. Because if you can't, if your job is always going to come first, then we need to stop now before Emma gets more attached." Vivian stood up, started pacing. "You're asking me to choose, my career or you." "I'm asking you to figure out what you want, because I can't keep waiting for you to decide if we're worth it." Vivian stopped, turned to face him. Her eyes were bright with unshed tears. "You are worth it, both of you, but I don't know how to make this work. I don't know how to be the person you need and still be who I am." "I'm not asking you to change who you are. Aren't you? Because it feels like you want me to be less busy, less ambitious, more available. And I don't know if I can be that person." Adrian stood too, closed the distance between them. "I don't want you to be less anything. I just want to know that when you say you'll be there, you mean it. That Emma can count on you, that I can count on you." Vivian's face crumpled. "I'm scared." "Of what? Of failing you, of failing her, of proving that you were right to be cautious." She wiped at her eyes, frustrated. "I've spent my whole life being good at things. At work, at deals, at making the right decisions. But this? I have no idea what I'm doing, and every time I mess up, I see you pulling back, and it terrifies me." Adrian reached for her hands. "I'm scared too. I'm terrified that I'm setting Emma up to lose someone again, that I'm letting myself care about you and it's going to blow up in my face." "So what do we do?" Adrian looked at her, really looked at her, and saw someone just as lost as he was, someone trying to navigate something neither of them had a map for. "We figure it out together," he said. "But Vivian, I need you to try, really try, not just when it's easy." "I will, I promise. And if you can't make something, you tell me early. You don't wait until the last minute and then disappear for a week." Vivian nodded. "Okay, I can do that." "And Emma comes first. Not your schedule, not your meetings. If she needs you, you're there. That's not always possible. Then we make it possible. Because she's already lost one person she loved. I won't let her lose another." Vivian pulled her hands free, wrapped her arms around herself. "You're asking me to reorganize my entire life. I'm asking you to make room in it, for us." Vivian was quiet for a long time. Adrian waited, heart pounding, knowing that whatever she said next would either save this or end it. Finally, she looked up. Okay. I'll make room. I'll try. I can't promise I'll be perfect. I don't need perfect. I just need you to show up." Vivian stepped closer. reached for his hands again. I love you. I should have said that before. I love you and I love Emma and I'm terrified of screwing this up, but I want to try. If you'll let me. Adrian's breath caught. You love me? Yeah, I do. Is that okay? Adrian pulled her close, buried his face in her hair. Yeah, it's okay. They stood like that for a long time, holding each other, both of them shaking slightly. When they finally pulled apart, Vivian was smiling through tears. I'm sorry about the concert, and Singapore, and every time I've let you down. I'm sorry for assuming the worst. We're kind of a mess, aren't we? Adrian laughed, surprising himself. Yeah, we really are. But we're trying. Yeah, we are. Vivian kissed him, soft and careful, like she was afraid he might break. Adrian kissed her back, deeper, trying to show her everything he couldn't say. That he loved her too. That he was terrified. That he wanted this to work so badly it hurt. When they broke apart, Vivian was crying again. I have something for you, for Emma, actually. She walked to the entryway, grabbed her bag, and pulled out a small wrapped box. I was going to give it to her at the concert. Can I still? What is it? Open it. Adrian unwrapped the box. Inside was a silver bracelet, small enough for a child's wrist, with a tiny dinosaur charm dangling from it. I saw it in Singapore, Vivian said, and I thought of her. I know it doesn't make up for missing the concert, but she's gonna love it. Yeah? Yeah. Vivian smiled, relieved. Can I be here when you give it to her? She'd like that. They spent the rest of the evening talking, really talking, about boundaries and expectations and how to navigate Vivian's impossible schedule, about what Emma needed and what Adrian needed and what Vivian could realistically offer. It wasn't easy. There were moments when they circled back to old arguments, when frustration bubbled up and threatened to derail everything, but they pushed through, both of them committed to making this work. By the time Vivian left that night, Adrian felt like they'd crossed some invisible line, like they'd finally stopped dancing around the hard stuff and started actually dealing with it. The next morning, Adrian picked Emma up from her sleepover. She climbed into the car, bright-eyed and chattering about the movie they'd watched and the pancakes they'd had for breakfast. Did you have fun with Vivian? She asked as Adrian pulled out of the driveway. Yeah, we had a good talk. Is she still your girlfriend? Adrian glanced at Emma in the rearview mirror. Yeah, she is. Is that okay? Emma thought about it. I think so, but only if she comes to my next concert. I'll make sure she knows that. Good. When they got home, Vivian was waiting on the porch. Emma's face lit up. You're here. I am. Is it okay if I hang out for a while? Yes. Emma ran to her, hugged her legs. Vivian laughed, ruffled Emma's hair. I have something for you. A present. Emma's eyes went wide. Really? Vivian handed her the small wrapped box. Emma tore into it, gasped when she saw the bracelet. It's a dinosaur. I thought you'd like it. Emma held out her wrist. Can you put it on me? Vivian knelt down, fastened the bracelet carefully. Emma admired it, turning her wrist back and forth to make the charm swing. It's the best present ever. Thank you. Why, She hugged Vivian again, fierce and genuine, and Adrian watched Vivian's expression shift into something soft and overwhelmed. When Emma ran inside to show Mrs. Alvarez, Vivian stood, wiped at her eyes. She's wonderful, Vivian said quietly. Yeah, she is. I meant what I said last night, about showing up. I'm going to do better. I know. Vivian looked at him, hopeful and uncertain. We're going to be okay, right? Adrian pulled her close, kissed her forehead. Yeah, I think we are. They spent the rest of the day together. All three of them. They made lunch, watched Emma's favorite movie, built an elaborate dinosaur habitat out of couch cushions and blankets. It was chaotic and noisy and perfect. And when Vivian left that evening, Emma hugged her goodbye without being prompted. See you soon? Emma asked. See you soon, Vivian promised. Adrian walked Vivian to her car. She turned to him before getting in, her hand resting on his chest. Thank you for not giving up on me. Thank you for not giving up on us. She kissed him one more time, then drove away. Adrian stood in the driveway, watching until her car disappeared around the corner. Inside, Emma was already in her pajamas, clutching Reginald and admiring her new bracelet. I like Vivian. she said. I like her too. Are you going to marry her? Adrian blinked. What? Like in movies. When people love each other, they get married. I don't know, baby. Maybe someday. Emma nodded seriously, like this was acceptable. Okay, but if you do, I get to be in the wedding. Adrian laughed, scooped her into his arms. Deal. He carried her to bed, tucked her in, and sat with her until she fell asleep. Then he went downstairs, poured himself a glass of water, and stood at the kitchen window, looking out at the dark street. For the first time in a long time, the future didn't feel like something to survive. It felt like something to look forward to. And that was enough. The shift didn't happen all at once. It came in small increments, barely noticeable at first. Vivian started blocking off Friday evenings, no meetings, no exceptions. She showed up at Emma's soccer games, even the ones that ran late, even when it meant rescheduling calls with investors on the other side of the world. She learned to cook exactly 3 meals: spaghetti, grilled cheese, and something she called stir-fry that was mostly just vegetables thrown into a pan with soy sauce. And she made them badly, but with enough enthusiasm that Emma thought it was hilarious. Adrian watched it happen with a mixture of relief and disbelief. He kept waiting for Vivian to crack, to decide this was too much work, too much compromise. But she didn't. She kept showing up, kept trying. And slowly, Adrian started to believe that maybe this was real. Emma's 8th birthday came in December, almost 2 years after that first accidental dinner. They threw a party at the house. Nothing fancy, just Emma's friends from school, pizza, a homemade cake that listed slightly to one side. Vivian arrived early to help set up, wearing jeans and an old sweater, her hair pulled back in a ponytail. You didn't have to come so early, Adrian said, watching her blow up balloons in the living room. I wanted to. Besides, someone has to make sure you don't burn the pizza. I've never burned pizza in my life. There's a first time for everything. Emma ran through the room, chasing one of her friends, shrieking with laughter, and nearly knocked over a lamp. Adrian caught it just in time. Vivian laughed, tied off another balloon. Chaos, she said. Yeah, you getting used to it? I think so. Or maybe I'm just getting worse at noticing when things are falling apart. Adrian smiled. That's basically the same thing. The party was loud and messy and perfect. Emma blew out her candles, made a wish she refused to share, and opened presents with the kind of manic energy only 8-year-olds possessed. When Vivian handed her a small wrapped box, Emma tore into it and gasped. Inside was a necklace, silver, delicate, with a tiny pendant shaped like a book. It opens, Vivian said, kneeling down beside her. See? You can put a picture inside. Emma clicked it open, found a photo already tucked inside. Her mother. The beach picture from the album, the one where Sarah was laughing at something off camera. Emma stared at it for a long moment. Then she looked up at Vivian, eyes wide and serious. You put my mom in here? I thought you might want to carry her with you, if that's okay. Emma didn't say anything, just threw her arms around Vivian's neck and held on tight. Vivian hugged her back, careful and gentle, and Adrian had to turn away because his throat had closed up completely. Later, after the guests had left and Emma was passed out on the couch surrounded by wrapping paper, Adrian found Vivian in the kitchen washing dishes. You didn't have to do that, he said. The dishes? The necklace, the picture. Vivian rinsed a plate, set it in the drying rack. I wanted her to know I'm not trying to replace her mom, that I'd never try to do that. She knows. Does she? Because sometimes I worry that she thinks I'm trying to take something that isn't mine. Adrian moved to stand beside her, took the dish towel, started drying. Emma loves you. She talks about you constantly. You're not taking anything. You're just here. And that's enough. Vivian looked at him, her eyes bright. I love her too. I didn't expect to, but I do. She's incredible. Yeah, she is. They finished the dishes in comfortable silence. When they were done, Vivian dried her hands, turned to face him. I have something to tell you, and I don't know if it's good news or bad news. Adrian's stomach dropped. Okay. I've been offered a position, chief operating officer for a company in Seattle. It's huge, more money, more responsibility, everything I've been working toward. Adrian felt the floor tilt slightly. Seattle. Yeah, They want an answer by the end of the month. I'd start in February. Adrian set down the dish towel, gripped the edge of the counter. That's big. I know. Are you going to take it? Vivian was quiet for a long moment. Then she shook her head. No. Adrian blinked. What? I'm not taking it. I already told them no. Vivian, I know what you're going to say, that it's a huge opportunity, that I'd be crazy to turn it down. And maybe I am crazy, but I don't want to move to Seattle. I don't want to leave you and Emma. I don't want to start over somewhere else. Adrian stared at her, trying to process this. You can't give up your career for us. I'm not giving up my career. I'm choosing what matters, and you matter, both of you. But, Adrian, I spent my whole life chasing success, building something, proving I could do it, and I did. But you know what I realized? None of it means anything if I'm doing it alone. The boardrooms, the deals, the money, it's all just noise. This? You and Emma? This is real. Adrian pulled her close, held her tight enough that she made a small sound of protest. Are you sure? I'm sure. I've never been more sure of anything. I love you. I love you too. They stood like that, wrapped around each other in the messy kitchen, until Emma's voice floated in from the living room. Are you guys kissing again? That's gross. Vivian laughed against Adrian's chest. She's not wrong. She's 8. Everything's gross when you're 8. They went back to the living room, found Emma still sprawled on the couch, the necklace clutched in one hand. Adrian scooped her up, carried her to bed while Vivian followed behind, picking up stray pieces of wrapping paper. It felt domestic, normal, like this was how things were supposed to be. After Emma was tucked in, Vivian stayed. She didn't ask if she could, just kicked off her shoes, curled up on the couch, and Adrian sat beside her, their bodies fitting together like they'd been doing this for years instead of months. Can I ask you something? Vivian said. Always. Do you ever think about the future? Like, really think about it? Adrian considered that. Sometimes. Why? I just wonder what it looks like for us. What do you want it to look like? Vivian was quiet for a moment. I want this. Exactly this. You and Emma and movie nights and birthday parties. I want to be part of your family. Adrian's heart did something complicated in his chest. You already are. Am I? Yeah, you are. Vivian smiled, leaned her head against his shoulder. Good, music. They fell asleep like that, tangled together on the couch, the TV playing something neither of them was watching. When Adrian woke up a few hours later, stiff and uncomfortable, Vivian was still there, her hand resting over his heart. He didn't move, didn't want to break the moment, just lay there, listening to her breathe, and thought about how close he'd come to never having this. Spring came. Then summer. Adrian finished the school year, spent his days off with Emma and Vivian, teaching Emma to ride a bike without training wheels while Vivian cheered from the sidelines. They went to the coast for a weekend, the three of them, and Emma collected shells while Adrian and Vivian walked along the water's edge. She's getting so big, Vivian said, watching Emma run ahead. I know. It's terrifying. Do you think about having more kids? Adrian looked at her sharply. What? Vivian's face flushed. Sorry, that was too much. Forget I said anything. No, I haven't thought about it. Not in a long time. Would you want to? Hypothetically? Adrian watched Emma bend down to examine something in the sand. I don't know, maybe. With the right person. Vivian looked at him, hopeful and uncertain. Yeah? Yeah. He reached for her hand, laced their fingers together. What about you? I always thought I was too busy for kids, too focused on work. But Emma changed that. Made me realize I actually like this. Being part of a family. You're good at it. I'm terrible at it. I burned macaroni last week. Who burns macaroni? Adrian laughed. You're learning. I'm trying. That night, after Emma was asleep in the hotel room, Adrian and Vivian sat on the balcony overlooking the ocean. The air was cool, salty, and Vivian had wrapped herself in one of the hotel blankets. Can I tell you something? Adrian said. Of course. I was terrified of you at first. Not just nervous, actually terrified. Vivian smiled. I know. You knew? You looked like you wanted to run every time I got too close. Like I was going to break everything just by being there. You kind of did break everything, in a good way. You made me realize I'd been living in this tiny, safe space where nothing could hurt me because I wasn't letting anything in. And now I'm still terrified, but I'm also happy, really happy. And I didn't think I'd ever feel that way again. Vivian shifted closer, rested her head on his shoulder. I'm happy too, happier than I've ever been. They sat in silence for a while, listening to the waves crash against the shore. Then Vivian spoke again, her voice quiet. I want to move in with you. Adrian went very still. What? This such set on my door. I want to move in with you and Emma. I know it's a big step, and if you're not ready, that's okay. But I'm tired of going back to my apartment every night, tired of splitting my life between two places. I want to be with you, all the time. Adrian pulled back so he could see her face. Are you serious? Completely serious. Unless you think it's too soon, or too much. It's not too soon, it's just, are you sure? Because once you move in, there's no going back. You'll see me at my worst. You'll deal with Emma's tantrums and my terrible moods and the fact that I leave dishes in the sink and forget to buy milk. Vivian laughed. I already know all that, and I still want to do this. Adrian kissed her, hard and desperate and full of everything he couldn't put into words. When they broke apart, Vivian was smiling. Is that a yes? That's a yes? They told Emma the next morning over breakfast. Adrian expected questions, maybe some resistance, but Emma just looked at Vivian and said, Does this mean you'll be there when I wake up? Yeah, Vivian said. Every morning. Good. Can you make pancakes? I can try. Daddy makes better pancakes. I know, but I'll get better. Emma seemed satisfied with that. She went back to her cereal, already planning where Vivian's stuff would go in her room. And Adrian exchanged a look with Vivian that said that was easier than expected. Moving Vivian in took 3 weeks. She didn't have much. Most of her apartment had been expensive furniture and art she didn't particularly care about. What she brought was practical: clothes, books, a ridiculous collection of coffee mugs, and one piece of art that Emma immediately claimed for her room. The first night Vivian officially lived with them, they ordered pizza and ate it on the floor because the kitchen table was covered in unpacked boxes. Emma sat between them, chattering about her day, and Adrian looked around at the chaos and thought, this is it. This is home. But it wasn't perfect. Nothing ever was. Vivian still worked too much sometimes. Adrian still struggled with anxiety about losing her. Emma still had nightmares about her mother. They fought about dishes and schedules and whose turn it was to take out the trash. They navigated the messy, complicated reality of building a life together. But they also laughed. A lot. They had movie nights and Sunday morning pancakes and inside jokes that made no sense to anyone else. Vivian taught Emma about business, about negotiation, about standing up for herself. Adrian taught Vivian about patience, about slowing down, about the value of ordinary moments. And somewhere in all of it, they became a family. Not because it was easy or perfect, because they chose it, every single day. 2 years later, on another autumn evening, Adrian found himself standing in his backyard holding a cup of coffee. The leaves were turning gold and red, falling in lazy spirals across the grass. Emma was 9 now, running through the piles with 2 of her friends, their laughter bright and uncomplicated. Vivian sat on the back porch, sketching something in a notebook she'd started keeping. She wasn't the untouchable billionaire anymore. She'd stepped back from some of her responsibilities, delegated more, learned to say no to things that didn't matter. She still worked, still thrived on the challenge, but she'd found balance. Or something close to it. Adrian walked over, sat beside her on the porch steps. Vivian looked up, smiled, and closed her notebook. What are you drawing? Whoa. The garden. I'm thinking about expanding it next spring. You want a garden? I want to try. Emma said she'd help. Adrian shook his head, amused. Who are you and what have you done with Vivian Sinclair? She's still here, just different. Better, I think. Definitely better. Vivian leaned against him and they watched Emma play in the leaves. The sun was setting, painting everything gold and orange, and Adrian felt something settle in his chest. Peace, maybe, or just acceptance that life didn't have to be perfect to be good. Do you ever think about that night? Vivian asked. The blind date? All the time. Me too. I think about how close I came to canceling. How if Danny hadn't crashed his car, we never would have met. Weird how that works? Yeah. Vivian paused. Do you ever regret it? Any of it? Adrian thought about the question, about the fear and the struggle, and the nights he'd wondered if they were making a huge mistake, about the compromises and the hard conversations and the constant negotiation between two lives that didn't quite fit together. No, he said finally. I don't regret any of it. Even the hard parts? Especially the hard parts. They're what made this real. Vivian kissed his cheek. I love you. I love you too. Emma ran over, breathless and covered in leaves. Vivian, are you coming to my play next week? Wouldn't miss it. Promise? Promise. Emma grinned, hugged Vivian quickly, and ran back to her friends. Vivian watched her go, her expression soft. She's amazing, Vivian said. She is. You're both amazing. We're all pretty amazing, actually. Adrian laughed. Yeah, I guess we are. As the sun dipped lower, painting the sky in shades of pink and purple, Adrian realized something. Love hadn't returned to his life the way he'd expected. It hadn't been dramatic or sweeping or easy. It had been slow, gradual, built from small moments and difficult choices and the willingness to keep trying even when everything felt impossible. He'd spent 3 years after Sarah died just surviving, moving through routines, taking care of Emma, existing in a space where nothing could touch him because he'd locked everything down. And then Vivian had walked into his life, or rather, he'd walked into hers, and slowly, carefully, she'd helped him remember what it felt like to actually live. It wasn't about replacing what he'd lost. Sarah would always be part of him, part of Emma, woven into the fabric of who they were. But Vivian had taught him something important. Grief and happiness could exist in the same space. You could honor the past while building a future. You could love someone you lost and still make room for someone new. That was the thing nobody told you about loss. It didn't disappear. It didn't heal completely. You just learned to carry it differently. And sometimes, if you were lucky, you found people who helped you carry it, who didn't try to fix you or make you forget, who just stood beside you and said, I'm here, and I'm not going anywhere. Emma ran back over, this time dragging her friends. Can we have hot chocolate? It's not even cold yet, Adrian said. But it's fall. You have to have hot chocolate in fall. It's the law. Vivian stood up. I'll make it. You sure? Last time you made it, it was kind of lumpy. I've been practicing. I think I've got it this time. Adrian watched her go inside, followed by 3 giggling 9-year-olds, and felt that peace settle deeper. This was what healing looked like. Not grand gestures or perfect moments, just ordinary life. Messy and chaotic and full of people who loved each other despite their flaws. He thought about the business card he'd almost thrown away, about the phone call he'd almost not answered, about every moment he'd almost given up because it was too hard or too scary or too different from what he'd planned. And he was grateful he hadn't. Because this, standing in his backyard on an autumn evening, watching leaves fall while the people he loved made terrible hot chocolate inside, this was worth every ounce of fear he'd pushed through to get here. Vivian appeared in the doorway, holding a tray of mugs. It's not lumpy this time. I used a whisk. Revolutionary. I know, right? I'm basically a chef now. Adrian laughed, took a mug, and pulled her close with his free arm. Emma and her friends grabbed their hot chocolate and ran back outside, spilling half of it on the porch. We should probably supervise that, Vivian said. Probably, but they didn't move. Just stood there holding each other, watching the chaos unfold. And Adrian realized something else. He'd spent so long trying to control everything, to protect Emma and himself from any more pain, that he'd almost missed this. Almost missed the chance to be happy again. Almost convinced himself that safe was better than risking everything. But safe was lonely. Safe was empty. And the truth was, nothing in life came with guarantees. You could lock yourself away and still get hurt. Or you could open yourself up, take the risk, and maybe, just maybe, find something worth having. Vivian had been worth the risk. Emma had shown him that every single day. As the evening darkened and the kids finally wore themselves out, Adrian and Vivian got everyone cleaned up and sent home. Emma went to bed without protest, exhausted and happy, still wearing the necklace Vivian had given her 2 years ago. Adrian and Vivian collapsed on the couch, both of them too tired to move. "Today was good," Vivian said. "Yeah, it was. I like this, our life." "Me too." Vivian turned to look at him. "Thank you." "For what?" For taking a chance on me. For letting me into your life even when it was terrifying. For trusting me with Emma." Adrian kissed her forehead. "Thank you for staying. For fighting for this even when it was hard. For loving us. Always." They sat in comfortable silence, the house quiet around them. And Adrian thought about beginnings. About how one accidental decision could change everything. How showing up when you didn't want to could lead somewhere you never expected. He didn't know what the future held. Didn't know if they'd get married or have more kids, or if Vivian would decide tomorrow that she wanted to take that job in Seattle after all. Life was unpredictable, messy, full of variables he couldn't control. But he knew this. He wasn't afraid anymore. Not of loving someone. Not of losing them. Not of building something that might fall apart. Because the alternative, living in that small, safe space where nothing could hurt him, wasn't living at all. And for the first time since Sarah died, Adrian Cole felt something more than just survival. He felt hope. He felt joy. He felt the quiet, steady certainty that everything was going to be okay. Not perfect, never perfect, but okay. And that was more than enough. Outside, the autumn wind scattered more leaves across the yard. Inside, Emma slept peacefully. And on the couch, Adrian and Vivian sat together, two imperfect people who'd found each other by accident and chosen each other on purpose. That was the real story. Not the dramatic moments or the grand gestures, just the small daily choice to keep showing up. To keep trying. To keep loving even when it was hard. And in the end, that choice made all the difference.